in this BoF. Bridget just began to record the meeting, and I put again a link to the meeting notes here. So I think that we are a bit too many to ask everybody to say who you are, but maybe we can do that with the people who will speak today. So I am Françoise Genova, and I will be a facilitator of this meeting with the help of several of my colleagues here. And I am involved with the hat of being the co-chair of the Regional Assembly of the RDA, because national data services are an important item when we think about a country and the kind of things RDA is doing. Gilles, sorry, I call you in the order I see you in my screen.
Hello, everyone. I am Gilles from France, from the French Ministry of Higher Education and Research, coordinating the French National Data Service, which is called Recherche Data Gouv, and here as a co-chair for the session and organizer for this session.
Thank you, Lee.
Everybody, Lee Wilson, Director for Research Data Management at the Digital Research Alliance of Canada, speaking to you from Halifax, Nova Scotia, here in Canada. So I'll be a participant in today's session, speaking to National Data Services in Canada. And I'm involved in RDA in a variety of different capacities, but I guess most prominently as a co-chair for RDA Council.
Thank you, Anwar.
Good day, everyone. Anwar Vaid. I'm director of an organization called DIRISA, Data Intensive Research Initiative of South Africa, and we're regarded as the national research data infrastructure for South Africa.
Thank you. Lautaro.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all. I am Lautaro Matas from La Referencia, which is the Latin American regional network of open science. And we group a lot of countries and national service. So I will try to participate and give our perspective here in this group.
Thank you. So to give you a bit of history on how we built this session, let's say that in France we have Recherche Data Gouv, and we were willing to push the subject towards RDA. And we know that there used to be a national data services interest group, but it stopped, and people moved to be in the global open research commons interest group mostly. So we think that many things have happened during the last years on the front of national data services, and that it's a good time to see there is enough interest in the RDA to propose again the interest group. And if there is enough interest, we have to find what the interest group will do. So the aim of the session is really to find if there is interest, already by a discussion between the people involved in national data services here, but also, of course, with the audience, and to begin to think about the possible roles of this interest group. So the way you may wonder how we choose the national data services which are among the organizers, it's very clear that, for instance, the continent I know better is Europe. There are other national data services, powerful ones in different countries in Europe, but we thought, and we were encouraged with that by the technical advisory board evaluation of a proposal, that it was better to be global, and then we will see how we go back to the different regions if we begin again. But if you know about a national data service, you are participating, you are here with us, if you know about a national data service, please, you are invited to provide information in the note-taking document. So I will show the note-taking document because it's a way also to show you the agenda of the meeting. So we are here. You are invited. Thank you for if you have signed up. Thank you very much. We see that we have a good representation of different continents here. And then the agenda is that we are doing the introduction. The timing is really indicative. Then the idea is to have short contributions from the meeting organizers. So today it's not a good time of the day for Australia and Japan, of course, but they will be present in the next session. We have a repeat session next week and they will be there. So today it's a good day or an acceptable type of a day for Canada, France, and South Africa. So we had a draft, we had predefined questions so that we can have a view which is comparable of the different national data services which will be presented. And we, as you heard from Laura, from our colleague from La Referencia, La Referencia is not by itself a national data service, but organizes a kind of collaboration and kind of federation in a sense of national data services, which are a lot oriented towards publication, as far as I know, but not only. And so we thought it was interesting to have a view of what happens at the level above the national level. And it was an occasion to have colleagues from South America. We could have also invited the EOSC for Europe or the African initiative, cloud initiative, but we thought it was good to have another continent represented and to take this occasion to have South America. And then we will discuss. So if you know about the National Data Service, please go down. There is, and you see it in the table of content, there is participant contributions. And you can put a name of a country and a summary of information about the National Data Service, eventually with links, so that we can gather additional information from other countries during the meeting. So here I am with the introduction. Any question at this stage? Please feel free to post your questions in the chat, if any. So it seems for the moment everything is clear. So Lee, can you start with Canada in alphabetical order? You are the first.
And I'll just confirm that folks are seeing my presentation.
It works perfectly. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Hi, everybody. So Lee Wilson, Director for Research Data Management at the Digital Research Alliance of Canada. The aim of my presentation during today's session will be to provide just a very brief lightning talk overview of national data services in Canada, which are led by the Alliance in coordination with many partners across the country. But before I start, I would like to respectfully acknowledge that the lands I am speaking to you from are situated on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. So to start off, what is the Digital Research Alliance of Canada? So we're a national nonprofit organization funded by the Government of Canada with a mission to advance and maintain national digital research infrastructure. The Alliance is governed by an independent board of directors, guided by a researcher council, and is accountable to member institutions across Canada. Our mission then is to convene experts and fund research activities in order to create a strong, vibrant, and equitable digital research ecosystem. But first, what is digital research infrastructure, or DRI, as we call it? So essentially, we know our researchers need robust tools, specialized software, ample computing power, all of which in order to advance and protect their findings and essentially maximize the utility and access to their data. There are a variety of drivers at play here, and they all speak to the need for comprehensive and I think in many cases, national data services, which are what we're here to speak about today. So in Canada, we tend to define national data services very much in this context of digital research infrastructure. And it's a definition that includes advanced research computing or high performance computing, research data management, and research software. Running across all three of these kind of core components or pillars, of course, is cybersecurity as well as training needs. And the Alliance is the organization that's responsible for overseeing the operations and maintenance of Canada's national DRI services. So now I'll speak briefly to our advanced research computing platform. So in this context, ARC encompasses high-performance computing, data-intensive research, data management and storage within this context of the active research phase. ARC demands high-speed networks, world-leading research software, as well as strong systems and standards in place nationally across the different host sites. So we support 5 national host sites or data centers across Canada, and we have user support through a federated model with staff that are distributed across a variety of Canadian post-secondary institutions. Our systems currently are a mix of general purpose as well as specialist platforms. So we provide community cloud alongside traditional HPC. So Arbutus, for example, is a national platform that is most focused on the community cloud offerings, whereas others like our Cedar and Graham data centers are more geared towards traditional HPC use cases. But that said, we do serve a very large research community. It's diverse. It's across all disciplines, and so as you can imagine, we do have a wide variety of use cases and needs that we need to service with our national DRI. And the same is true for our national RDM services and programs. So we host a variety of services and programs to benefit Canadian researchers. These include a data management planning tool to help researchers develop DMPs in compliance with best practice, as well as new national funder policies that have emerged in Canada. We also support 2 national multidisciplinary repository options. So these are the Federated Research Data Repository and Borealis. And these services provide storage, access, and preservation of data in compliance with journal and funder policies. So in addition to the repositories to support publication of Canadian research data, we also operate a service called Lunaris, which is a national discovery service that allows users to find Canadian research data wherever it lives across over 90 currently Canadian data repositories. And that's a list that we're continuing to work on and to help grow. Of course, we also support vital infrastructure components, such as support for various persistent identifiers. And we have 2 national consortia here. So the first is ORCID Canada or ORCID CA for ORCID IDs, which are, of course, persistent identifiers for researchers. And we have DataCite Canada, which is our national data site consortium for digital object identifiers. Finally, a major driver of RDM in Canada comes from our RDM network of experts. So this is a volunteer grassroots community of practice of data and information management professionals, largely from post-secondary, but also from other research institutions across Canada. And I think it's worth highlighting in this meeting that the network of experts functions very similarly to RDA, with the Alliance RDM staff acting as the stewards and facilitators of the network, and its various expert and working groups. So the outputs from this network are absolutely invaluable. They contribute to the development of best practices in RDM and standards and documentation and materials. And as well, the work of the network feeds directly into the growth and development of our national RDM services. So now I'm going to conclude by speaking very briefly on the developing vision for our next funding mandate from our federal government. And this funding mandate will run from 2025 to 2030. Although I do have to say as a caveat that this is a proposal that is still under development. It has yet to be formally submitted to government, and therefore I can really only speak to it in kind of high-level terms. But I can say that this vision is built on what we see as major emerging trends in the ecosystem broadly. So of course, we see that the volume and complexity of research data and the need for more compute capacity continues to increase exponentially. Second, whatever your thoughts may be on it, generative AI is here. It's a part of the scientific discourse. And it presents a clear and pressing need for increased compute capacity and access to high-quality data sets. And finally, the need for increased national data security and sovereignty, which of course has to include considerations around indigenous data sovereignty, is becoming increasingly critical, and we have to tackle these issues while also balancing the importance of fair data and open science initiatives. So, to that end, we're developing a future vision for Canada's national data services that I'll share with you briefly today. And the aim here is for these to provide a truly national data platform that allows for improved access to tools and services to better support researchers and enable compliance with both national and international funder policies. So currently, as you heard, we do have a robust suite of national data services across ARC, RDM, and research software, but they are currently fragmented and they're spread across multiple web access portals, and there really is today no clear path for researchers to follow to lead them across the data lifecycle. So this is one of the things that we aim to address with our next funding mandate. We also want to position Canada as a leader in mobilizing research data across a variety of different sectors, so academia, government research, as well as academic industry collaborations. So in our current mandate, we do work predominantly in higher education, and expanding to these other sectors will help to reduce duplication of efforts across, for example, higher education and government research, as well as introduce enhanced sustainability opportunities through collaborations with industry partners. We also want to continue to build the talent and workforce that are required to enable a strong and data-driven research sector across the different sectors that I talked about, so academia, government, private research sectors. And we want to do this through enhanced training, learning, and workforce development programs and initiatives. Our proposal also aims to increase Canada's compute and storage capabilities into exascale, and this would be in alignment with our G7 peers and other jurisdictions around the world. And of course, this is to help address the exponential growth in compute capacity that's required to remain competitive and also to attract talent and research mandates to Canada. And finally, we will be seeking to move Canada's high-performance computing facilities toward net zero carbon emissions, while also achieving the benefits of scale that accompany national coordination in DRI. So that's it for me today. Thanks so much for listening. I really was only able to scratch the surface on Canada's future vision for national data services, but I'd be happy to speak to what I can during this discussion period, and looking forward to contributing to today's discussion. So thank you very much. Oh, Francois, you are muted.
We will have questions and comments after the four talks. So the next one is Gilles, and I think we will begin to see the diversity of the national data services. So go on, Gilles, with the France example.
All right, can you see my slides?
Yes.
Good. So let me talk in the next few minutes about the French National Data Service, which is called Recherche DataGouv, which is a complete ecosystem for sharing and opening research data. As Lee did, I will also just go through the surface, and I hope there will be time for more discussions afterward. So the idea of Research DataGouv and the French national policy on open research data is an ambition to open up all research products, so not just only data, but also publication and source code. So that's a very broad ambition, which is shared by many countries, I guess, and which is set by the law starting 2016 in France. There was the first law that said that all research output should be open, and that has been reinforced since then twice in our two open science national plans in 2018 and 2021. The idea being, of course, to have a more cumulative, robust, and reproducible science. So, coming to the last of these three documents, the French second plan for open science clearly states as one of its objectives and its measures to create an ecosystem, which is called Recherche Data Gov, so research data Gov, basically, which will offer a sovereign and certified storage and signposting for research data and a range of support services for researchers. So the aims are just to make sure that none of our researchers are left with no solution to open or share their data, but also to make the support a central element of the system and actually recognize and federate what's already existing. The world didn't wait for us to open their data, so there will be many initiatives before we started, and the idea was not to reinvent everything, but just to federate what was already there and make people work together in a global ecosystem. So there's a network of support services, and there's a solution for depositing the data. So those support services, the aim of those support services are to be close to the research community and to help those who already started opening their data to raise awareness of the necessity and the interest of opening their data for those who didn't start or who didn't know about it, and to help them throughout all the data life cycle. The solution for depositing is a repository. It's a Dataverse repository, which is federated in the sense of the operation. It's hosted and operated by different partners at the French level. And it's a generic repository, and it's a complementary to the thematic repositories which already exist. The idea is to be an alternative to other non-so-fit solutions, such as commercial platforms or non-trustworthy platforms. And the idea was from the beginning to be a service with an international scope, and for us in Europe, within the European Open Science Cloud. This is a very synthetic view of the ecosystem. As you can see, there is at the bottom the technical aspect of the platform, the data repository and the data registry. So as I said, data repository is a Dataverse repository, which is mutualized and open to all, with the possibility to have institutional collections in there. And the data registry is a project which has just started and is currently ongoing, with the idea to harvest data from external repository and present them to the community. And then you have here at the top the different support clusters. The data management clusters are local on a geographical basis. There are around 20 now, which are labeled as national data management clusters. They help the researchers on different university sites. There are the 19 existing are grouped by the big cities in France and the big university centers, like, of course, in Paris, in Strasbourg, in Lyon, in Marseille, in Toulouse, in all the big cities, basically. We've got the thematic reference centers, which are on a disciplinary basis. We've got 6 at the moment, so that doesn't cover everything, but that's a start. And we've got life science, we've got earth science, we've got biodiversity, we've got astronomy, and human science. We have resource centers which provide resources to the others in the form of different means and material to provide support. So that can be data management plan, that can be training resources, that can be training for the trainers, and so on. And we have institutional reference centers, which are, well, representing the institution that already had a long-standing policy of open science and that we've integrated in the ecosystem so that they interact with the others. So the international landscape and our interest to be seen at the international level, well, basically is just that on the two sides, on the repository aspects, it's good not to be alone. So join and co-construct a network of repositories is something that we're really interested on. And of course, to work beyond national borders on cross-disciplinary subjects. We've got many of our users and our communities which are involved at international level through ESFRIs or through international communities already acting across borders, and we want to link with that. On the support aspects, this is also something very interesting, that we want to share our expertise and share good practices, best practices with colleagues from all over the world. And we're starting at the European level with different projects, such as the Skills for RIOSC project, just to be a national competence center and being the first break of this competence center, just to share and support training practices at continental level and beyond. The reason why we joined the session, and we wanted to push that through RDA. So our interest in starting the National Data Service Interest Group is, of course, the networking aspect, because this is a very good opportunity for us to discuss the issues that we all share on operating a national data service. There's no one size fits all in this subject, so it's good to see the diversity and to see how people, nations, countries answered to that diversity and what solutions they've put in place to match the reality in their country. And of course, to learn from it and try to integrate what works best for our activities. Of course, again, identify shared best practices and link with all other RDA groups recommendation outputs that could be useful for everyone. And that is it for me. You're still muted, Françoise.
Thank you, Gilles. I think that you have additional slides if people want to know more.
Yes, I do, and I will put the link. So there are also a few slides that give more details, so you can feel free to browse offline.
The link is online already in the
okay, good. Thanks.
Anwar, you're next.
Okay. We'll share. Sorry for the delay. I'm trying to get share my presentation. Here we go. Let me just put it into presentation mode. Can everyone see this?
Yes, it works well.
It's okay. You're in presentation mode.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, this is about DERISA, as the heading shows, the title shows, National Infrastructure for Research Data. And just to give a bit of context about DERISA, we form part of a bigger organization called NICIS, the National Integrated Cyber Infrastructure, and as shown on the right-hand side there, you see that there are three areas: the data services area, which is DERISA, and then other components of NICIS would be the CHPC, Center for High Performance Computing, and then SANREN providing the national NREN services. So the three components together constitute NICIS, and the idea is for us to support various research and development in various areas in South Africa. On the left, you see the mission and vision of DERISA. We're a national initiative, and the idea is to support research data management and data-driven research. So we regard ourselves as equivalent to or more or less on the same level, albeit at a much lower scale, as other equivalent or similar organizations across the world. There's some examples shown there. And we've adopted this tiered perspective of research data repositories. What we realized at the outset is that not all data can be hosted by a single organization. And the idea here is to federate other organizations into DRISA. In other words, we will use some sort of a catalog or something that will point to data that sits at other organizations. SANSA, for example, is South Africa's National Space Agency. They host quite a lot of remote sensing data. And the idea is not to take over the hosting, but to federate into their repositories. And similarly with universities and other activities across South Africa. So what do we do? Well, there are four main objectives. The most important one is the provision of a robust data infrastructure, a place where people can store and manage their data. We're also quite involved in the development of policies. We don't have the authority to provide national policies, but we do give recommendations and foresight information, thought input into the development of related policies related to data, research data in general. Then we've got a role in developing skills along all levels, from undergrad to postgrad. And we have quite a number of activities going on in supporting the development of skills and related expertise in data and in the data sciences. And then, of course, lastly, is to make ourselves more visible and to reach out to especially other organizations in South Africa as far as data storage and data management is concerned. Then we've adopted this model, the ODI data access model, realizing that not all data can be open, but we encourage very strongly that data must be open by default. So there are services that provide storage for open data. There are services that provide storage for group-based, project-based data, and then there are also services which provide a certain level of security and confidentiality for especially sensitive data. So we've adopted this model in terms of access. The services that we provide, there's a discovery service, basically a search and browse facility, which allows users to look for or to search for specific data sources. This is fairly widely used by quite a number of researchers across South Africa. There's a user subscription service, which is a single sign-on service that gives the user access to all the other services that DRISA provides. The data deposit tool is essentially an upload service, which allows users to upload data sets. And when you subscribe to DRISA, you automatically get 100 gigs of storage for free, not 20 gigs as shown there. And you can decide how you want to use that storage and share that storage with other DRISA users. We have a data management planning tool. This is a bespoke service that we have developed, especially for localized conditions, trying to accommodate the needs and requirements of various universities and research institutions, and especially the National Research Foundation, the NRF, an organization in South Africa that funds most of public research in South Africa. So a data management planning tool is now a requirement by several universities and by the NRF. This is in quite heavy use right now. There's quite a number of researchers across the country using this service. We've got two minting services. One is for a DOI. It's basically a subscription to the DataSite service. And the other one is also a kind of a internally developed handle provisioning service. And the intent is to migrate to this handle provisioning service so we can cover more than just data sets, but all digital objects in the future. So this is just a summary of some of the services that DRISA is providing to the community. How it works? Well, it's quite fairly simple. On the right-hand side, that's the single sign-on service GUI that you see there. And you sign up, you get 100 gig storage, and then afterwards you can ask for more. You can apply for long-term storage. You can mint a handle or a DOI and write your DMP, make your data open, and so on. And there are services that support all of these features, these functionalities. And these services are free to all users in the public domain. In terms of private companies who have approached us, there would be a cost recovery charge. That's a cost model that we have adopted. Okay, this here shows the interface that we've developed for DShare, what we call the DShare service. And essentially the user provides a lot of data, metadata. A DOI is assigned if there's not one already assigned. And then that particular data set or data collection is then publicly available at our site. This is still in QA, quality assurance stage, and we hope to deploy it towards the end of this month, in fact. Another example, the data management planning tool. Again, what you see on the right is part of the interface, and this is internally developed, infrequent use, and very successful in our environment. Yes, some of the open data users, list of some of them. SAMRIC, South African Medical Research Council, they've got about 140 terabytes right now. ILIFU is an astronomy project run by a consortium of universities. The CSIR use DRISA climate modeling. Itemba Labs is a nuclear physics lab, and we provide quite a lot of storage for them. And again, CSIR for AI applications and AI data used in AI. Diplomics is a South African research infrastructure, and they are also storing quite a lot of data concerning the humanities, concerning bioinformatics, I should say, at DRISA. And then quite a number of universities and individuals at universities are using the data, the DRISA data services. The picture on the right is our long-term archive. It's a tape system capable of capacity of 20 petabytes. And then also what we're trying to promote as much as possible is use of DRISA by what we can call the non-traditional, non-scientific communities. For example, the digital humanities, they are now beginning also to use the DRISA resources. A very simplified architecture of how things fit together. We use IRODs as the front end for our system, and this is accessible at the URL that you see there. And through iRods, users can then get access to 8 petabyte active or hot storage, or to 20 petabyte passive storage. Then we also have a very important link to the CHPC compute systems. So the idea here is that if a user wants to do some computing or analytics, anything like that, the data will be transferred from either the 8 petabyte or the 20 petabyte storage systems to the CHPC compute systems. Processing is done there, and then they can choose whether they want to send that information or data back to either one of the 2 storage facilities that we've got. And there are plans to increase, in fact, to double the capacity of both of these storage locations. The 8 will go to 16, 20 will go to 40, if budget allows. We hope to increase, it is dramatically, the use of these systems is increasing dramatically. This is our future vision, if you like. What we would like to do is actually collect data as soon as possible from the origin. So the idea is for us to actually link into especially laboratory systems, instruments, science instruments like optical telescopes and so on, and try to capture the data as soon as possible, store them, and then provide them in an open source way to the general research community. That's the vision, if you like, for DERISA. Then lastly, I should mention that we're also implementing what is called the South African Open Science Cloud Framework. There is a declaration and a roadmap of actions for implementation. The picture on the right is a piece of that declaration. And what we are now working on right now is to see whether we can get all of the different enablers in place, as is given there under the recommendations, so that we can promote and encourage open science practices in South Africa. So that is all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anwar. I think we will cross the ocean and go to South America and the Caribbean. Lautaro?
Thank you. Can you hear me and you see the presentation?
Everything fine. Go on.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Francois. Yes, well, as I said, I am the Executive and Technical Director of La Referencia. La Referencia, I will give you a very brief view about La Referencia. As Francois said, this is not a national service itself, but it's a group of different institutions, national government institutions, working together towards open science since more like 10 years now. La Referencia was created by a cooperation agreement that was a result of an International Development Bank project led by Red Clara, which is the Regional Research and Education Network. So those are the countries that are part of La Referencia and their national institutions. And of course, each of these national organisms are responsible of several national data services. I want to focus on 2 main aspects of La Referencia. One is the policies. We act as a forum for discussing different policies. We emerge as a network to discuss open science policies in general. Our first goal was to promote, and still is to promote, the visibility of the scientific production from Latin America and Spain, especially the one funded with public funding. So we are focusing on reducing the gap of the countries. You know that Latin America is a very unequal region with countries like Brazil with huge developments, Argentina, and other small countries with smaller development. So we work together in order to fill those gaps and try to create services, public good services for data and literature and research results in general. So from over a decade, we were working on building and developing different technical solutions to build open and value-added services on top of the metadata that we collect. We created an aggregation system based on a federated structure. I will talk more about that in a moment, but we consolidated that federated system by developing this open platform and deploying that open discovery and metadata enrichment and evaluation platform among all the La Referencia countries and nodes, funding national services in all the member countries. So we, at the same time, collaborate and to enhance the open science ecosystem in the region and through international collaboration with other initiatives like Open Air. We were part of Open Air projects founded by the European Union. We are collaborating with Africa in order to deploy these open platforms in different regions of Africa and countries. And we, of course, we have active participation in the Confederation of Open Access Repositories. So we are trying all the time to make this leverage and make the access to scientific information possible for our regions, because the lack of resources, not all institutions have the funding to pay for accessing to the closed data and closed literature. So I want to bring three aspects of La Referencia which are key for our work. One is governance. La Referencia is governed by the board, composed by the representative of the member governments, mostly agencies and science and technology and national councils. So we have this we operate as a federated network. That means that we build these national services with discovery service, interoperability service, metadata harvesting and enrichment. Each of our nodes runs the platform, and at the same time we run a version of the platform at a regional level. So we collect and we harvest all the metadata and also share that metadata using OIPMH and other interoperability protocols with other global and regional aggregators and services. We actively collaborate with the other big initiatives in our regions. You may know that Latin America is full of a long tradition of around open access, like Retalix, Latindex, and Cielo, mostly devoted to publication and diamond access journals. And of course, we sustain all these efforts by the annual contribution of the countries, of the member countries, small contributions, I must say. We have a very small team, but we try to squeeze every cent to make this possible. So, and of course, Red Clara, our regional and education network, provides us, is like our mother institution. I provide us administrative, financial, and infrastructure services. We have, during the last 10 years, we were working, and in our birthday, we were talking about the next strategic goals for the next years. We want to achieve a full political representation of the region. You may have noted that we don't have all the countries inside La Referencia, so we are actively working on bringing more and more governments inside La Referencia. We maintain this dialogue, continuous dialogue and policy coordination among the countries in order to encourage the development of open science and national strategies and policies for making this possible. So we are constantly deepening our partnership with other regional and international initiatives. We want to bring also the research, national and research education networks inside La Referencia in order to build infrastructure for open science. We are promoting this movement around making indicators and metrics and research evaluation and assessment more based on open science, on measuring open science and monitoring open science. We have a strong vision about non-commercial open access publishing of the scientific production. We want to make possible the cultural shift, the cultural change in our research communities, because we need more work and more advancement on research data published and reused. And we, of course, we keep developing more infrastructure and more technological tools in order to support this national service in coordination with the regional services. And we have a strong vision about doing this and sharing this as not only as open software, but also as public goods, as regional public goods. So we have some technical goals that we are working on in this moment. We are trying to solve a problem that is global, but is very serious in Latin America and in Africa also. That is the access to the persistent identifiers. Only 20% of the metadata in our repositories have DOIs or any other persistent identifiers. So we are working on a project based on the IBICT Brazil, the Institute of Scientific Information in Brazil. And now with this project is supported also by La Referencia through SCOS. By the way, the French government did a very good contribution to La Referencia and this project through SCOS. And we also working in the usage statistics system. We already have a usage statistics system collecting usage events among the repositories and making aggregation and providing services to the national scope and the regional scope and the repositories individuals. So we are working with other initiatives also to make this more interoperable and exchange the usage statistics between other global and regional initiatives. So, and of course, we now focusing the La Referencia Open platform in trying to feed this big graph and different services that are important now in the global scope, like OpenAlex, and of course trying to make this metadata more compatible with ROR and all the other persistent identifiers. We want to enhance the presence of the regional metadata because we think that there are potential indicator and research assessment sources like COCI, OpenAlex. We are trying to work together in order to make this possible. And of course, we keep working very hard in building this regional open science ecosystem by exchanging and bringing metadata from the other initiatives at regional level, but also at global level. So that would be all. I must say that I am including in this presentation, I'm including more information for you to, if you want to focus on examples of national services or learn more about the projects, you will find or the additional information in my presentation.
Thank you very much. This is why the presentations are online, so that people can go and get additional information. So thank you very much. I think it was, you know, RDA is characterized by diversity, and I think we have had that on the screen for the last hour. So thank you very much to all the speakers. I think that at this stage, I saw a question on to Gilles that was answered, and I see Dale is okay with the answer, so it's okay. I don't see any other question. I think that we have half an hour to go through the next steps, in a sense. And if I remember what I saw in the slides, I have seen a list of possible goals for the interest group, if we think it's useful, in Gilles' slides. So there is this, and then there is also a kind of question. You know, we are discussing national data services, and there has been a modelization of GORC's Global Open Research Commons by the relevant working group. And I think that I recognized, I was a member of that group, and I recognized some of the hot discussions. For instance, a GORC will propose policies and recommend policies. And yes, it's the kind of thing in which we are glad to have with us C.G. Woodford, who is one of the very active co-chairs of the GORC interest group and working group. And so I guess he recognizes a few things when he sees that. C.G., do you think you can recognize a general model for national GORC, national research, national data infrastructures, or you see so much diversity that we need an inclusive model as usual?
I think what I see is that, you know, we had intended to make the GORC model kind of encompassing of a lot of different things, which included pan-national commons like EOSC, as well as, I would say, La Referencia, and as well as national and regional. And I think, as was shown, there's kind of like this tiered relationship between all these different levels of commons or service providers or infrastructures. I think something that could happen with the GORC model is that we actually create a national profile. And that's something that could be a collaboration between the two groups, because I think there is certainly enough to talk about at the national level to justify having the interest group start again.
So I think that it's a possible aim of the interest group would be to have a task force or something similar to see if we can work with you on a national profile. It would make sense. I think you probably thought about it, but it would be necessary to work with the diverse national data services to be able to progress, to see what the model has to have as items in the model. So I think we can already have this as a possible aim, but it's a specific aim and not a high-level aim about networking. So maybe, Gilles, you have your slides not too far, and you can show your slides, and we can discuss what you have proposed. Or I read them. I can eventually read what you have written, and we can discuss one by one with people online, looking at people. So it may be better. So if you get Gilles' talk and the last slide of what he presented, we have why would we like to start the National Data Services Interest Group? So networking with colleagues from all around the world. I think we are beginning that here. do you think it makes sense to go on with that after what you have heard? So, Lee, you don't speak, but I see.
Yes, I think it's clear from today's meeting that there's a lot of value, even in simply getting together to share information about the different activities that we're doing. In the presentations, I heard a lot of commonality, which I think is great. And I think, likely CJ, you saw this in the context of GORC and in developing GORC, that there are sort of a common suite of services that we could home in on when we think about national data services, but there's also different approaches that are being taken. So for example, I think Gilles left, hopefully he'll return, but I was very interested in the federated support cluster model that France is undertaking, and it would be excellent to have a venue to meet regularly and kind of share information to learn more about these kinds of things. So I think for that alone, there's good reason to start up or restart the interest group. But I also really liked CJ's suggestion around working with the GORC group to develop a national profile. I guess the only thing I'm wondering, and we've already run into this, is the name National Data Services too delimiting? So we have La Referencia here, and I think there are others that might consider themselves, I don't know, more regional. I don't know, maybe there's a better word, or maybe we're just not too worried about that definition, and we can be inclusive.
I think that the regional services, the regional clouds or whatever have somehow different characteristics because of a tier. It's a tier approach also. And we thought that there are many things to share between, when we discussed this with Gilles and others at the beginning, there are many things to share at the level of the national data services, which are in their national context. And we have this, which is already different for each of them. And the expectations, if it is in the law or in something which is a national policy, you have to fit with a national policy and so on. So we thought there were many things to exchange at that level. My feeling is that we were hoping to have someone from the EOSC here today, but it seems it was not possible. And we did not ask them directly, but I think that we have to understand how the national data services interact with the regional thing, whatever it is, and when there is one, which is not always the case. And I have the impression that understanding how a national data services builds itself in its own context and interacts with the regional level, it's part of the aims of a group. And so this means we have to hear the regional somewhere. They have to be associated because they are part of the landscape. But it's true that they might like to be able to talk together also. So we will see. And so, yes. So, but Lautaro, sorry, you were invited to give a perspective, a regional perspective to that. And we were not sure about what to do with the regional aspect. But do you feel comfortable if we say we are on the national side, but we understand how this interacts with the regional level?
I must say that I feel perfectly comfortable with the idea of participating, because we are discussing the national level all the time, and the national level is like part of our soul in a way. So even we can bring the national nodes if needed to present any specific services. I didn't went in deep of that today. I wanted to present the regional, but there's a lot of things happening at the national levels that are comparable with some of the things that the other speakers presented today. So
Yes, that's clear. I think it's an introduction to what happens in Latin America and the Caribbean, what you have said. And what I take from what you said is that what we can do by discussing the national level is useful for the regional level. So we can add that to the reasons to build the interest group. And it's what I take from what you said. You are discussing that all the time. And if we help you to understand what happens, you will be glad. Is that correct? So I think we found another reason to make to build the interest group, at least on continents which have a regional something. And I think Anwar, it can be also the same thing in Africa. I guess there are things at the national level, and there are the African Open Science Cloud, and how these things interact is part of the landscape. So I guess we have a good reason here. So we can take the next lines in Gilles. So networking with colleagues and bringing input. So the bringing input to the regional endeavors will come later, I guess. Embrace the diversity of the national data service landscape. I think we had, with 3 cases, we had a beautiful illustration of the diversity. So there is a diversity. And I think when something like this happens, we need to take the measure of the diversity somehow. And Gilles wrote, better understand and learn from others and from the diversity for our activities. I think it holds well. And I think that building a GORC model for national data services, which encompasses the diversity, is part of that category, in a sense, because we have the diversity, we have to understand it, and putting it in a common model is part of understand what is happening, in a sense. I remember the exercise of building the GORC model, and it's really trying to understand what are the elements and how they interact between themselves, among themselves. So is it okay to embrace the diversity, understand it, learn from it, and modelize, build a common model? And then, as a result of networking, we have the shared best practices, which is good for us. Well, I am not a national data service, I am sorry, but I will take that hat for a second. Shared best practices and find the relevant RDA groups. So we have one already, which is the GORC, but I think it's not the only one. And to find if we have RDA recommendations and outputs which could be pushed to the knowledge of the national data services because they could make use of them. There is, for instance, the cookbook about how to bring researchers to dealing properly with their data. And for all what I heard for the national data services which have activities in that direction, this is something which could be very useful. So there is a mapping of RDA groups to be done as a possible activity for the interest group. I think about it because I am doing that we are doing that for evaluation of research. So I think it's a useful something. And yes, I lost the chat. Where is it? So yes. Okay. You think, Lautaro, you think about the meeting next week or the meeting of this meeting repeated next week? Or
not the same meeting, but maybe in the closing session. If you are going to participate in closing sessions, I am bringing Washington Segundo, which is the Brazilian national partner, and we have a lot of common work and partnership. especially on this persistent identifier and other projects like CRIS system aggregation and metadata working. So I think that we may be presenting some more detailed work about the mix between their very strong national node in relation with La Referencia and the regional work.
Yes, so this means there is a meeting point during the final plenary, which will have a Latin American focus, linked both to the grand tour of the Secretary General in the region, and also the fact that Costa Rica is the host of the next hybrid plenary, I guess. So good to know there is a meeting point there. And I see, Seiji, can you explain what you have written?
Yeah, it was around when you were discussing best practices and bringing best practices through the networking in this interest group. One of the things that we're working on with the GORC model and creating profiles, because we're currently trying to get a working group started for a discipline-specific profile, is that we can ask individual organizations that help us make the profile. So in this case, it would be a national DRI or national commons or national data services profile. What are their implementations of that model? Not just what should be in the profile, but how are you doing those items, which are essentially those best practices. And one of the outputs of that, of the discipline specific one that we're looking at, that could also be for national level commons and data services, is a knowledge graph that kind of showcase what are those best practices, and not necessarily saying that each group has to do the exact same thing, but more so to say which groups are doing what. So then you have a selection of best practices to choose from that might be better for your context.
Yes, it's. I remember very well the discussion during the GORC model group. The fact that we are not saying do that, think about doing that if it fits what you need. I remember very well that.
Yeah, non-prescriptive.
I think it's well written everywhere. It's not prescriptive. So, Gilles, I think you were thinking about putting a research data gov in GORC model somehow at some point.
I personally was not thinking at anything,
No,
but yes, definitely, yes, that would be something like, yeah, something that we will be looking into, yes.
I know that Stéphanie Cheviron had began to think it was a good idea.
Yeah.
So Stéphanie Cheviron is a colleague from Strasbourg, who is one of the persons who is an facilitator of the relationship between the Atelier de la Donnée. How do you say this?
Data management clusters.
Sorry, I know the French name, but not. And one of the characteristics of the data management clusters is that they are working together and building best practices by discussing. So it's one of the things which the national overseeing of this kind of local clusters bring, that everybody progresses by discussing with others, in a sense. So do we have, I think I went through all the topics Gilles had covered, and we added the GORC thing. We added the fact that we are willing to discuss with the regional services to understand better the relationship between national and regional level. Do you have other things which could be added to the charter, to the role, to the group, to the interest group role? I hear a long silence, a deep silence. So does this mean it's more or less time to close this session? Please speak up. It's your last chance to speak up.
I think we've got an interesting list of common interests that justify for the creation, well, the recreation of the interest group. And I think there will be many things to discuss. Yeah, that would be interesting to know if there are any amongst the participants which are here, any other national data service they can think of, or they could be interested in joining the group beyond the ones that have organized the session and already presented themselves.
Yes, I see there is a list of national data services in the notes, which is added by colleagues, I guess, with links. So there are more in Europe. This we know. So this means that we will I think we reached something today. We will meet again next week, at an hour which will not be so nice for the colleagues from Europe and Africa, but I understand people want to be here to discuss with the colleagues from Asia and Oceania, so everything is fine. Can we consider we have reached the aims of the session? At least I see, I see, yes, of course, Joanna. We know very well in Europe we have NFDI, for instance, in Germany, and people in Finland, and so we know there are. So we have to find a way to contact them. And what we were discussing for Europe, what we were discussing with Alex Delipalta during the first session, the first plenary, what can RDA Europe do? It's a kind of topic on which RDA Europe can help to identify and get in touch. And I think Gilles is already in touch with a number of these other colleagues. So I think we can have, if things build well, we can organize a meeting before the next plenary and gather more people. It's quite possible, or 2 meetings at 2 different times, and to try to progress before the next plenary. So this is quite possible. But you are right, Joanna. We are not, as I said, we looked for global, to have people from different continents and not to be complete in a given region, let's say. So it's certainly not inclusive of all the possible partners or participants. So, dear colleagues, if we finish now, you gain 8 minutes compared to 1 hour and a half meeting. So I see no
Thank you for sparing 8 minutes of our lives.
You did it, all of you. And so now you can have 8 minutes to stretch out, like my American colleagues say. So see you next week anyway for the colleagues.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Federico is going to participate for us
okay,
next week.
So it will be Federico.
I will be in a meeting. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much. See you.
Thanks to you.
Hey,
and so
bye-bye.
we will have colleagues from we will have someone from La Referencia also next time, so it's okay.
See you. Bye.
Ciao.
Ok, on a la main pour arrêter l'enregistrement?
On peut arrêter. L'enregistrement, il le gère. C'est-à-dire que si on
arrête Zoom, ça arrête l'enregistrement. Ok.
Je peux l'arrêter.
Bon.